People are being lulled to sleep, Geronda. With everything that is going on in the world today, how can people get some help? The one who really desires to be helped can indeed be helped through insignificant things. For example, a vigil oil lamp is seen moving back and forth, or the person himself is shaken by an earthquake and he recovers from his indifference. But those who do not believe in the first place become worse. When they hear that a war will break out or some catastrophe will take place, let's have a good time now, they reason. Life's too short. So they pull out all the stops. In the past, even the indifferent ones would recover and change their way of life when a war was about to break out. Now, such people are very few. In the past, our nation lived spiritually, and God would bless it, and our saints helped us overcome our enemies, who were always more numerous than us. Today we say that we are Orthodox Christians, but unfortunately we often only have the name Orthodox, but not the Orthodox way of life. Once I asked a spiritual father who was active in society and had many spiritual children, "What do you know about a blasphemous movie?" "I know nothing about it," he told me. He knew nothing about it and yet was guiding so many people in a big city. People are being lulled to sleep. They want people in the dark, carefree, and having a good time. One must not dare to speak about an impending war, or that we must prepare ourselves for the second coming. God forbid that we should cause the people to worry over such things. It is like some old ladies who say, "Don't talk about death. Talk only of joyful things and baptisms," as if death is not waiting for them too. So they have a false sense of joy. On the other hand, if they were to think about the aged man down the street who died yesterday, or the other one who has come to the end of his life and will soon die, or that a memorial service is being held the day after tomorrow for someone much younger than them, then they might be inclined to think about death and say, "I must go to confession, prepare myself spiritually, for Christ may call me soon to the other life." Otherwise, death in time will take them unprepared. Some others again, out of supposed kindness, give the following advice: "Don't tell the heretics that they are in error," to show them love. So everything is leveled. If these people had lived during the early years of Christianity, we wouldn't have had a single saint. In those years, Christians were told, "Just throw some incense in the fire for the emperor and do not deny Christ." And they would not accept this. "Just pretend you are throwing incense." Again, they refused. "Don't talk about Christ and go quietly to some other area." Again, they did not accept any compromise. But today, one sees so many lukewarm people. Geronda, when the Apostle Paul writes, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy," does he mean that joy is an indication of a proper life? Yes, because there is worldly joy and divine joy. When something is not spiritual pure, there cannot be true joy and peace in the heart. The joy experienced by a spiritual person is not the worldly joy sought by many today. Let's not mix things up. Did the saints have the kind of joy we are seeking today? Did Panagia have such joy? Did Jesus go around laughing? Which saint has gone through this life without pain? Which saint had the joy sought by many present-day Christians, who do not want to hear anything unpleasant, who do not want to worry or lose their serenity? If I do not want to worry or be troubled, so that I may be happy, if I do not want to lose my serenity, so that I may be meek, that I am indifferent, Spiritual meekness and meekness out of indifference are two different things. Some people say, I must be cheerful because I am a Christian. I must be calm because I am a Christian. Such people are not Christians. Do you understand? That is indifference. It is worldly joy. One who has these worldly elements is not a spiritual person. A spiritual person is a mass of pain. That is to say, a spiritual person is pained over circumstances, over people, but is compensated for this pain by divine consolation. He does feel pain, but inside he also feels divine consolation. For God is pouring blessings from paradise, and man is overjoyed with the divine love. This is the joy, the spiritual joy, which is not expressed, but rather abounds in the heart.